Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Justin, and this guy needs no introduction. We've done this a bunch. Matt Pasut, thank you for joining this again. Trade deadline just passed just a couple hours ago, so let's talk some hockey here, bud.
That's it. That's why we're here. I think you should go first this time. Let's hear what you got to say. Let's talk about a couple trades, some of the big ones. We'll get to the Leafs too. So um,
Yeah.
I think it's time we roll out the red carpet for you to start for once.
Well, really quite uneventful, and I think that was pretty predictable. All the reports were that this trade deadline was going to be very unpredictable, and that a lot of teams, especially the ones that were looking at offloading a lot of contracts and blowing up the team, were looking to do that in the offseason. So maybe some of the big fish that we might have seen in a typical year weren't available this year. But the Leafs were able to get what I think was the perfect guy for the team. I know you have a little bit of a disagreement. You agree on some aspects, you disagree on some. I think Nick Foligno was the guy that the Leafs should have been after all along, and I think that Kyle Dubas has been eyeing him for weeks, if not months. He admitted today in a press conference that the impressive play from Alex Galchenyuk and the improvement from some of the players on the team have, I guess, modified what he thought to be a prime item that he would need to address at the trade deadline. And instead of going for more of a skill, high pace forward, we ended up going with more of a gritty player, one with leadership and one that can fit the locker room a little bit better in the
Hmm.
trade deadline. Um, I think it's a steal of a deal. I know we gave up a lot of great assets and some draft picks, but I mean, we'll get to some other deals soon. Some other teams were spending current roster players, and the Leafs didn't
Yep.
have to do that to acquire what they needed to make this deal go through. So I loved it. Let's hear your thoughts.
I don't hate it. Um, I think the reason why we're fans is because um, we don't know shit, and that's why we have to stick with this end of the totem pole. I don't know. You hear first being thrown around. You hear a lot of names leading up to today. Rickard Raquel didn't move. I thought his name was out there, and I'm pretty sure I brought up Philip Forsberg to you about months ago. You get excited. You hear about the spending. You hear about the cap space available. You see the move for Riley Nash. You see Anderson being gone. What's their intention with Anderson? We don't know. That's why we're fans. So we got to think about it from a management perspective at some point and kind of just get the bigger picture. Um, a lot of people upset, like a first for Felino, a second, and a low roster player for Hall. Taylor Hall didn't want to come here. Taylor Hall would be, I think, scared to come here. I think
I don't
his
think we
scores.
wanted him either.
I don't think they wanted him either. I think from Dubas's standpoint, being around that group, seeing Galchenyuk, like you said, and getting the feel for the team, I think that the perfect fit was depth forward, depth D, and reassurance in the net with Riddick, right? So Ben Hutton fits that position well too. I think
Mm-hmm.
Liljegren's going to get some opportunity coming up now. We see Robertson coming in tonight. I think that was a statement by Dubas to say that he likes the team, that he loves them, and that he believes in them, and that he's just going to add those pieces. But again, fandom, right? First pick, cap space available. Everyone was thinking big fish. Everyone was thinking top six forward, right? Um, you know, I don't think it's a coincidence that people were throwing around draft picks, especially for a draft in a year where you're not going to be seeing a lot of these prospects playing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of sad that Dubas didn't get rid of the last two that we had for this summer coming up. I thought that would have been epic for him to just clear out the cupboard and have no picks going into the draft and probably end up making moves um, after the playoffs leading up to the draft or on draft day to find picks that he liked for players that he had his eye on. And I still think that's going to happen. Um, but I do like the trade. I do. I think that bringing Felino in again, we're fans. I don't think he's going into our top six. I think he solidifies a third line that no one's going to want to play against. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's going to be a lot of roster rotation going on. I think from this point on, there's going to be steady opportunity for Robertson, and if he can prove himself, he'll be slotted in that top six. If not, he's going to be used in a lesser role, and we'll figure out where he fits in. But we do have depth up front, and you just added a guy who's not going to disturb the locker room, who's going to add to it. I like the fact that he's a little bit older. He hasn't won the cup yet. We got a lot of guys that need to win. They don't want to win. They
Mm-hmm.
need to win. Their career is coming to that twilight, and they need to win. Um,
I said this in a video actually that I posted on the channel just yesterday when we made the deal, that I don't think Kyle Dubas sees veterans as, oh, the older presence in the room, just, being able to lead the younger guys and show them how to play. He
Yeah.
sees these guys as the most desperate guys on the team, the guys that are going to try the hardest in the playoffs because they don't have much time left. And if they want a chance at a cup, this is the team and this is the year to try. So
Yeah.
I think he thinks Simmons, Spezza, Thornton, now Foligno, those are going to be four, if not the four, but some of the four hardest working players every single night in the playoffs because
Yeah.
they are willing to leave it all on the table for a couple of them. It could be their last season in the NHL. I sure hope not, because I'd like to see them all return next
Yeah.
year. But
Yep.
that's unpredictable at this point. We don't know. He doesn't see them as veterans. He sees them as desperate and the players that are going to work hard.
So I said this earlier for sure in another conversation. Dubas critiqued himself coming out of the Sioux and out of the Marlies with waiting way too long to bring in veteran guys, bringing in that leadership. Um, and I think ever since he's actually been stapled as the Maple Leafs GM, not interim, not assistant, since he's been our GM, he's brought in Muzzin, he's brought in Clifford, he's gone after Simmons, Thornton, now Foligno, right? There have been good deals in between. There have been those 5'8" small skilled forwards here and there. Barabanov, who got a mercy trade today, just like Lettinen did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leafs need to make sure that their relationship with the KHL and being able to be a destination that they want to come to is still open. And I think making that deal to get rid of Lettinen early so that he can play and that there's no bad blood, and also with Barabanov now, I think that's perfect, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there have been those skilled players, there have been those possession players, those stats and charts and analytics players, but he has done a really good job of addressing the fact that there is more components to a team than just what you can see on paper, right? So Jarmo Kekalainen, I think, is by far probably, if not the best GM in the league, I think he's definitely a top 3 candidate every year.
Steve
Yeah,
Eisenman.
Steve Yzerman is a bully, and we'll get to him in a second. Jarmo Kekalainen, he makes deals when he needs to make deals. He hasn't. He got the short end of the stick with the Domi deal. Anderson, right? Anderson
Yeah.
just having a good fit in Montreal and coming off well. Domi not looking great. Line not looking great. I told you earlier, Roslovic was going to be a big part of that deal for
Yeah.
Dubois. He looks great. He's an Ohio kid too, so playing at home, that was a lot more of a that was a bigger part of the deal that a lot of people didn't pay attention to until he made that one sick move where he went between the legs and then scored. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. But Kekalainen wasn't playing around. This team was selling, but not selling hard. Savard and Foligno, both UFAs at the end of the year, he managed to get firsts and
Yep. Yep.
thirds and fifths and fourths.
Yeah.
So,
I think Columbus could be its own full separate video because, yeah, Jarmo Kekalainen has done a fantastic job. And especially at this trade deadline, he got a lot of great assets as far as draft picks so that they can build a franchise back up that, as of right now, on the flip side, is just a place that no big player wants to play.
no,
Like, they are not a destination for any free agents.
no.
Nobody's going to want to move there. They're at risk of losing Line, and even today during the trade deadline, Line's name did come up just a few
Yeah.
short months after being traded there. Like, that's a whole nother conversation. But the fact that they were able to get the first, the numerous fourths, the pieces from the Savard deal, it means that they're on the right track.
Yeah.
And with that said, I think as far as the Foligno deal with the Leafs, both sides win here.
Yeah.
I mean, the
And
results of it are yet to be seen because, of course, the Leafs side of it is dependent on this playoffs in particular. It's a rental piece. You need him to be able to perform and do what he needs to do in the playoffs. But I mean, the Leafs got the player, the single player that I think that they were after, the player that they wanted most, they got. And Columbus in return gets important draft pieces for hopefully a rebuild that's in the next 5 years going to show its worth.
I
So,
think shorter with Tortorella there. I think you'll find a way to make sure it works. They do have cap space now going into the summer. It's a flat
yep.
cap year. That was a totally underestimated, well, not underestimated, but I just think overlooked on our end by just the mass public of just understanding exactly what was going to be happening leading up to today is that cap staying flat for the next couple years. You had to get multiple teams involved to retain salary to an
Mm-hmm.
appropriate amount to make it work for certain teams when it came to bigger players, right? So Um, I don't think there was a bad deal today, at least. Sam Bennett for a second maybe was a tough one and a prospect. I'm not sure. I think a lot of teams are banking on the fact that the environment that change of environment will boost that player. I think Boston and Taylor Hall are both thinking, if I get out of Buffalo, if we pull him out of Buffalo, we put him on Krejci's wing or Bergeron's wing with Pasternak on the other side or Marchand on the other side, maybe we can get him going again. And for Anders Bork in a second, it works. I think that's a mentality that Taylor Hall thought it was a safe play.
Mhm.
Boston's already having trouble scoring. They're not looking that great offensively. It's been their defense by committee. And with two of their starting goalies out, Halak and Rask missing, you know, that's where their struggle's been. And I think he went there as a safe play. Honestly, I thought it was I don't know, a bit of a cop out, but that's fine. Maybe
I
maybe
think
maybe he
uh,
bounces back here. Maybe he becomes the Taylor Hall of the Fugazi Hart Trophy.
yeah,
I saw that
it's
on
no
Twitter today.
secret that he was lacking a supporting cast in Buffalo, and even still, his advanced analytics were very positive, and he was putting up a great amount of assists. The goals you would have liked him to put the puck in the net a little bit more, I think.
Yeah,
But Boston addressed an issue that they had, in which the scoring behind the top three, the Pasta, Bergeron, and Marchand, just wasn't sufficient for a team that's looking at another deep run in the playoffs, especially when that those guys are getting older.
yeah,
They wanted to beef up that offensive group. I know that they were also looking to add on the defensive end, and I believe they got Mike Riley to do that. But
yeah,
I think that they would have probably liked to have gotten a little bit more as far as the defensive and, as you said, the goaltending end of it. Um, but Taylor Hall is a great ad for them. I just don't like how fans like to compare players that are getting acquired during the deadline and what they go for, and completely ignore what the needs of each team are and the
or the
assets
fact
and the
that the
whole
players
situation.
have no move clause or no trade clauses or modified.
Yeah, I mean,
Taylor Hall was
I,
very explicit in saying he declined a lot of deals to a lot of
mhm,
places and that he single-handedly picked Boston. He was on a modified no trade clause. He basically got to pick where he went, and that also dictated the price in which was going to come back to Boston.
yeah,
So I'm with you on that. And Bob McKenzie said it. I saw it on Twitter, even though I was out working today. I saw it like people comparing and contrasting and complaining, most importantly the market was the market and the players dictated the market a ton.
yeah,
So you see a lot of players with no move clauses or no trade clauses or modified ones. So it's not what it was. Um, that being said, there were those depth pieces that I think are going to come into a bigger play. Ben Hutton is essentially ensuring that the Maple Leafs won't have to see Martin Marincin,
mhm,
right? I think
yep,
Liljegren's going to step in here over the next little bit, maybe get a little bit more playing time. I know Sandin's out with his fractured foot,
but
uh,
close to returning.
but close to returning. So he'll need a stint with the Marlies to get back to game shape, and maybe
Mhm,
he takes a step as well. But Ben Hutton's a really good insurance piece. David
mhm,
Riddick is a really good insurance piece. I know it's a third round pick. I have
mhm,
no doubt in my mind that if Kyle Dubas has a player in mind in the third round that he's seen or his scouts have seen, that he will go and find a way to acquire a third round pick back. So I'm not
yeah,
really worried about the picks being thrown around. I have no idea how any analyst or any insider has any credibility left thinking that the Leafs are going to trade one of their 3/4 top prospects. We had this conversation the other day. I was driving up to Tobermory on a road trip. We talked about it at length, and I feel like that should be redone a little bit quickly.
yep,
Robertson, Sandin, Liljegren, Amirov.
mhm,
The most expendable was Amirov because the
yep,
other three are NHL ready. And they're also going to be NHL ready at league minimum for the next 2 to 3 years. How in the hell were they going to trade any of those guys and bolster their roster for one cup run when this is going to be a flat cap NHL for the next 3 years and the Leafs are already pretty tight up against it? It made no
yep.
sense whatsoever. So the idea that those guys were ever on the block or that there was risk of losing them or even the Leaf fans giving credit for not trading away any of them, I think it was all bullshit to begin with because I didn't see it. It was a non-starter, and Dubas said it today, didn't he?
Well, there was not a single player on any trade bait board from 1 to 100 as far as the players most likely to move that I would be willing to move one of those 4 pieces for.
Yeah.
If we moved one of those 4 pieces, I would expect it to be something that completely was off the board, a big deal where, it wasn't something that anyone could have seen coming because
Mantha.
not a single name that I saw on that trade bait board, I would be willing to move a prospect for. Now, like you said, Amirov being the one man of the 4 that would be most expendable, I think part of that is, of course, where he is in his development, but also the way I see it is, managing your assets. We moved Kasperi Kapanen in exchange for Philip Hollander, as well as the pick that resulted in Amirov. And if you move Amirov for a piece that can help you today, well, that's great asset management because you moved Kapanen just this offseason and you were able to get an effective piece for your playoff run. So that's why I saw him as a little bit more expendable, and I can excuse moving a first round prospect for that purpose. But even still, those 4, I think, are the future for this team. And that's why personally, I really do not care at all about the moves that we made today as far as
Yeah.
moving out draft picks, because we don't need players or picks for players 4 or 5 years from now. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the wrong mentality. If you're management, if you're the GM of a team that's looking to win a Stanley Cup this year, the last thing you should be thinking about is your team in 5 years.
That's right.
I know obviously it's important, but it's not your priority. Your priority
No.
is this year. And the fact that you've got the likes of Sandin, Liljegren, Amirov, Robertson, who are all not even full-time NHLers yet and ready to be that in 2, 3, or 4 years. I mean, that means that these draft picks that we have for this year's draft and even next year's draft, we don't need them. They're not
Yeah.
essential to us, but they are essential to the likes of a Columbus Blue Jackets, to the other teams around the league that are looking for immediate players to develop. And so, again, comparing deals today, just given the fact that this player got this in return and this player got this in return, I don't think is a fair evaluation because every situation is different. For the Leafs, draft picks mean nothing to me right now,
Yeah.
especially like you said, in a year where scouting is completely haywire. And the Leafs have one of the best scouting setups this year, considering the fact that half the league fired half of their scouting staff. So the Leafs, I think, kept their second round pick for this year.
Yeah. What do we have left?
There's the potential that we can get a stud
Picks?
there, right?
We have 2 picks left, I think. But
And I'm fine with that.
yeah, I totally agree, and I think that I don't think we're going to go into the draft with 2 picks, or at least end up drafting 2 players out of this draft. I think there will be acquisitions, and that's not
Mhm.
for us to know right now. Like, we're focused on finishing off the year, making sure that new players are being integrated properly, and that things are running smoothly, and that there's no disconnect along the way, because Dubas has a clear plan for this team, and you can see it. It's keeping his core together, and
Mhm.
it's moving forward with it. And I really think that he's taking bits and pieces of championship teams and seeing what worked and what didn't. I think he sat back long enough and he watched Lou do his thing, and he's been in that passenger seat long enough, looking around the entire league to figure out what's going on here. So if I hear another fucking Nylander trade, I'm gonna lose my mind. I am. I
Yeah.
am. I think it's ridiculous. We love to see for the brand, we love to see the fact that there were players moved in this window that were supposed to be moved for Nylander. The Nick Kyprios trade, Brett Ritchie and Brandon Montour for Nylander. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Alex Petrangelo for Nylander.
Man, I'm
Petrangelo's a
pretty
good
sure
player.
at one time it was Nylander for Sammy Vatanen, who just got picked up off of waivers today, right? Like Vatanen used just a couple years ago was the number one focused right-handed defenseman on free agency.
He also played on one of the deepest D core in the league with a very strong team in front of him. Like, we need to take in product of environment at some level, right? So
Mhm.
let's stop. I think the litmus test now to be a Leaf fan is if you actually have a disagreement with the fact that William Nylander is probably one of the top 3 players on the team, not 4, top 3 players on the team, and he belongs. And he is in fact underpaid. If you don't believe that, we don't talk. We don't talk
Mhm.
anymore, right? We can deal with the fact that there are some deficiencies on the back end now. Let's actually touch on the fact that Dubas said that the clear plan for Frederick Anderson is for him to come back. I think that's interesting. I thought the
Mhm.
whole idea was that, Campbell and Riddick were going to ride the wave. I have a feeling that Campbell's kind of coming back down to earth. Maybe, not sure. The Leafs D has been, well, you know how I feel
Horrendous.
about them. Yeah, you
Yeah,
know how I feel. We
horrendous.
got into it on the weekend. I'm not happy with a lot of them, but you know, if Campbell's coming back down and maybe Riddick's here to push a little bit or even to suffice in case it does come a little bit too far back down to earth, you do have Anderson still as an option. They made a lot of good deals to make sure that that 5 million is still available for him to come back, right?
Yep, yep. I
So
think that it's definitely there to push Campbell a little bit. It's to give the team a little bit of reassurance. I think that Hutchinson had done a great job this year, especially
fantastic,
compared to his
fantastic job.
performance last year.
Yep.
I'm still not fully confident in Hutchinson when he's in the net.
No.
So who knows if the team is as well. I'm happy with the Riddick deal. I think what this is, and they touched on it in Trade Center today as well, is we are avoiding a situation that Colorado looked at last year where the guy that's our third string goalie now, Michael Hutchinson,
Is
was
in the
forced
net.
to start their
Yeah.
playoff games last year because their number one and number two went down. And I mean, there is foreshadowing of that because, of course, Anderson is out right now on LTIR, but Campbell's still nursing an injury of his own, and we
He
don't know
is.
at what capacity he's at full health. So it is a possibility. It's in the realm of possibility, knock on wood here, that Campbell, that injury starts to peak up on him a little bit. Anderson fully isn't ready, and Hutchinson would have been the starter in a playoff game. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think anyone is. Still not comfortable with Riddick, but it does give us a little bit of relief knowing that, down the stretch, if we think Campbell needs an extra day of rest, play Riddick. Go with Riddick and Hutchinson on the bench. If we think that Campbell has the potential of going down, we've got Riddick there so that we've got a little bit more comfort. But like you said, if Anderson comes back, which I think he will, best case scenario, having Campbell and Anderson ready for the playoffs at full health is number one priority.
Yeah.
And that's the best case scenario. People seem to
100%.
think that Anderson is terrible. That I can't
No.
tell you how much that pisses me off.
No, that's
Nobody
that's a
ever made
shame.
that claim. Nobody made that claim before the season started.
Yeah.
This season, very underwhelming. Of course, I'm not going to deny that. Still solid goaltending, just well below what you would expect from Frederik Anderson. And we know now, considering the fact that he hasn't even been on ice for a month, it's because of an injury. He was
Yeah.
playing through something serious, and he was only doing that because Jack Campbell was playing through something probably less playable. And so, of course, Anderson was going to play under his expectation. But
Yeah.
when he comes back at full health, if we bring him back, whether that's as a backup or the starter, I would still run with Campbell as long as he's hot. But like you said, he might be coming back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah.
I have full faith in Anderson playing at a great level as long as he's fully healthy. And I think that's what the team is doing here. They're just making sure he's going to be fully healthy. If he's ready to come back before the season ends, then we made a little bit of room, I think, so that LTIR can come back on the cap. But if not, he'll be ready for playoffs. And we've got now three, if not four goalies that we can have a little bit of confidence in should it come playoff time.
Yeah. I think Dubas is. I think it's clear. Four goalies. You have 8D now, maybe nine, depending how quickly Sandin can come back. And I don't even want to count how many forwards because Joey Anderson looks good right now. You got
Mm-hmm.
Robertson. You got Adam Brooks, who still needs a shout. You
Nick
have
Patan could play too.
Nick Patan. You know how I
Yeah.
feel about Nick Patan.
Yeah.
Um, we got a lot. We really
Got
do. And
lots.
and I think
I don't even know who's going
Stefan
to come out of the
Noason, who we
lineup
just
when
picked
fully
up.
known.
Um, Probably your guy, Engvall. I I
Yeah. I
I
was thinking at
yeah.
some point they're probably going to give Thornton a couple games off just to give him a little bit of rest
That
going
was
into the
part of the
playoffs.
press
But,
conference just now. I think is that
oh, yeah.
Dubas said that Thornton understands that there's going to be a little bit of rotation going on, and he's fine with it. And I think that's great, honestly. Um, I think the one thing that the Leafs do need to figure out before we even have a further conversation about what's going on, have a further conversation about how Anderson's going to perform, how we should feel comfortable with any of the goalies in net, or how far we're going to take a run here. They got to figure out how to play defense.
Mm-hmm.
So we had Jake Muzzin traded from LA to Toronto, looked like a revelation as a hockey player because we haven't had that big puck moving tough defenseman. I'm finding that he's completely kind of lost that identity, or now I'm starting to think, did he even have it at all? Did the beard just fool us? Or were we just excited to get something new for once when we did pick him up 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Morgan Riley. I'm not even going to touch Hall right now. We're going to go straight to Mo because I get into an argument with everybody about this. I feel like there's a lot of sentimental value towards him, and I feel like for what people are telling me he is, what he's identifying as, because I love the broadcast the other night, seventh highest scoring defenseman in Maple Leafs history, just passing Brian McCabe, who was atrocious. Um, if you're going to be an offensive defenseman, your best defense is never losing the puck. Like, that's my standard for you. When Erik Karlsson was in Ottawa, he was the best player on the ice at all times, and he stinks at defense. You know why? Because the puck didn't leave his stick. And if it did, it was a 40-foot saucer pass to Mike Hoffman on a breakaway through 7 sticks. He was doing something with it. So I understand that there's a little bit of gamemanship here, and I understand that there's a style that needs to be played and that the team is identified as, heavy pinch on one side. And we talked about this earlier, um, but I'm just not seeing it and I don't get it. And I think TJ Brody, for as good as he's been, I can't even imagine how much better he'd be if he wasn't constantly just backing up. So we've had stretches. I think Brody's been consistently from game two, period two, from game two, because the first 4 periods as a Leaf, I swear to God, I hated him. But from game two, period two to now, consistently probably our best D. I think Dermott's been super
100%.
quietly good. Super quietly good. I think Bogosian, we haven't complained
They
about
are
it.
sheltered with their minutes in their competition, but they have looked
100%.
good in that role.
100%. But so was Polak and so was Well, no, CC was actually thrown to the Wolves. But,
CC first line. Yeah.
yeah, we've had those situations in which our third pair was actually a big issue where we couldn't actually play the guys. I would put after Brody, I would put Hall as consistently just okay. And you're going to disagree with that.
I would love to fight that one. I don't think
You
that
absolutely can. And we can, and then that's fine. And that's fine.
yeah.
But I know from a coaching perspective that you're only as good as your D partner. And when I'm looking at Riley and Muzzin consistently being off game, that I'm not really going to put a lot of blame on the other two. And just because Brody is, we can say it, he's a better player than Justin Hall is. And because he can hide the mistakes better and because he can cover for them better, doesn't make Hall the worst out of the 4.
I don't think Hall's the worst out of the 4. I think those 3 players need to figure it out, but you're talking about 3 of the 4
Yes.
underperforming, and that means 2 of them are on the same pairing, and that's Hall and Muzzin. And so I don't care which one of them is the weakest link. The fact that you've got 2 on the same unit, especially the unit that's supposed to be our shutdown unit, losing coverages, looking lost, turning over the puck, and looking like they're underperforming. I don't care if it was Hall and Muzzin or if that was a Riley Muzzin pair or if that's a Riley Hall pair. It's just not good enough. And you can't be relying on them to be your shutdown pair if they're going to have those glaring mistakes. And to me, Justin Hall is the guy that, doesn't have as much experience, does seem to be the one that's making the most mistakes. He does get caught up out of position a little bit too much for my liking. But in general, just those two, like the amount of times that I've seen recently, Hall and Muzzin taking the same player and leaving the front of the net wide open, they both go to the same corner consistently, or they both go behind the net and
Behind
they're
the net
not behind the
together. I
line
saw that 100
consistently.
times. Yeah, you can make
The
it a
good thing
drinking game
is,
and get hammered by the first period. It's not fun.
yeah, and I mean, I know you like to make the argument that Morgan Riley makes those turnovers so often, but the fact of the matter is he's got TJ Brody on his line, and if we give up a 2-on-1, TJ Brody is extremely good at breaking up those 2-on-1s.
Too
It's
good.
not something that we should be relying on. Absolutely, it's something that Morgan Riley needs to clean up. Absolutely, but TJ Brody is there to redeem the mistakes that Riley makes, and when Muzzin and Hall make mistakes, nobody's there to redeem them.
No, I feel like they're too similar to actually have
Yeah.
backup for one another, which is kind of crazy though, because one's making 6 and the other's making 2. But
Yep.
that's definitely a factor when you're going to
Mm-hmm.
talk about building the team going forward. At the end of the day, I think Sandine and Liljegren are starting in this 6 next year. Whether that you got
Yep.
to make space, you
You
have to
have
make
to.
space. So it doesn't matter. There you're going to be saving at least $2 million. Call it what you will, right? 2 guys are
Yep.
gone. Those guys are coming at league minimum. You're going to be saving that. Robertson will be up next year. Robertson's actually going to cost more than our league minimum vets. So, You lose there
Has he
from
burned the first year of his ELC yet,
no,
Robertson? I don't think he
no,
has.
no, because he was an
Okay.
emergency player last year in the playoffs, and he hasn't played his 9 games yet.
Right. Yeah.
So
It
he
could
will.
happen this playoff, but
I say
regardless,
it
that's the
happens from
first
this
of
point
3
out.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
I'm
two
not
more years
concerned
after
about
this.
that.
No,
Yeah. Just to
we're
wrap
we're
this back here, Matt, and to maybe close it up a little bit, going back to trade deadline. Well, I just wanted to bring up something that you and I had brought up at length early on in the season. I think even before the season had started. And that was it looked like Kyle Dubas's main mission going into the season was building internal competition and
mm,
building a plethora of depth at every position. And it didn't work out as well because, we got Aaron Dell as our third goalie and Michael Hutchinson as our fourth. And then we lose Aaron Dell to waivers. And all of a sudden, Michael Hutchinson, our third. And then from the defensive end, we had the advantage of having Mikko Lehtinen, but, to help manage the off-season signings from the KHL, you need to be able to move that player to give him an opportunity
yep,
elsewhere. So we lost a little bit of it, but his mission survived to today, where we got a piece, at least one piece in every position.
yep,
And I think that still holds true, where he's looking for that competition. And hey, if it comes down to it in the playoffs, if we've got some underperforming players, or if we get an injury, we've got players ready to step in, whether that's Hutton or, like you said, Liljegren, Sandin. I think either of those are able to hop into that lineup.
yeah,
And on the offensive side, Dubas brought up today Riley Nash. Nobody's even really thinking about it because everybody thinks that it was a pure cat move, but Riley Nash is a very serviceable player for our bottom six.
100.
Great
percent
center with some size. So I think this team, the objective that they had today for the trade deadline, just shoring up every area of the team. It builds a little bit more of that internal competition. It builds a little bit more of that depth to give us a little bit of insurance if we get any injuries or underperformance. And it was a success to me. What do you think?
I agree. I agree. I don't even want to say you have to wait to see what happens. I think those were the right moves to make.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think there was much else available, and I don't think there was much else out there. Like we said, Taylor Hall picked where he wanted to go and play. I don't think bringing in a guy like that who's struggling right now and putting that pressure on him to join our top six would have been smart either way. Doesn't matter the price. The team's doing well enough offensively. Um, were we going to blow everything up for Anthony Mantha? I think Steve Yzerman's an absolute bully. I think the fact that Bernier wasn't moved probably means that he was asking for a lot.
A lot.
Glendening, same thing. I think there
Yeah,
was a
what did I
lot.
tell you? We were talking about potential deals a few days ago, and you were bringing up a couple of players like Bernier to get instead of David Riddick. And I just said, you know what? Avoid Detroit at all costs
Yeah,
because
Steve
Stevie
Yzerman,
Y is going to fleece you out of
100%. And I
whatever you
think
get.
that's why Tampa was comfortable with him moving on, was because I don't think he was willing to lose trades like a first for Coleman, a first for Goodrow, and being okay with that. Right? I think he's a really good builder. We're going to see now if he can finish in Detroit, but he doesn't lose trades, right?
He
Breezewall
refuses to
had to
lose
come
the
into
trade.
Tampa and go, you know what? Here's a first. Here's a first. Let me solidify my bottom six. In fact, those firsts were really good paid first. There was no
Mm-hmm.
salary retention on either of those deals, but there was an extra year. They have them for this playoff run as well. So those were good deals. I like them. And if you want to compare first picks for rentals, like, well, they got quite a bit more, but I don't think Yzerman was going to be willing to make those deals. So maybe it all worked out there, but I think Jakob Vrana is a hell of a hockey player, and I think Steve Yzerman absolutely won that deal.
Yeah.
I think Manta's a fantastic player, and I think that in Washington's mind, you got a team that can still take a run at it. You have some guys that are aging. You have some contracts that are expiring. You have some things that you really need to kind of push the envelope on. So, but I really don't know what the upgrade value on Raffle and Mantha are from Ponick and Vrana.
Well,
So I
that right there, I think is the real difference. I think Mantha is one hell of a player, and he is absolutely going to make Washington a better team. But if you're comparing the deals that Washington made today and Toronto made today, they both acquired what they wanted, except Toronto did not remove a single piece from their main roster, and Washington did. And like you said, Verano's a heck of a player. Panic can provide a little bit of value, especially in a bottom six role in the playoffs. I don't think they're really huge pieces to move, especially because you're getting the lights of Mantha back. But
yeah,
the fact that a team pushing for rental players for a Stanley Cup push is giving up their current roster players to do so, I mean, you give, but you get.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and the
Mantha's
Leafs
got a
didn't
year
have to
left
give.
after this, so they'll have him again. I think just the
Yeah,
buildup of that top
sure.
six now is you got Wilson on one side, on one line, you got Mantha on one side, on the other line, you got some big bodies that can do some damage,
Oh,
and you got your
100%.
playmaking down the middle. You got some scorers on the other side. They look dangerous, but I think it was an attractive move by both, but I think that Steve Yzerman is probably one of the most impossible GMs to deal with. So let
Absolutely. I just
everybody
think that if Washington's goal was to win the Stanley Cup this year, if that was their main objective, the
they
fact that
that
they gave
yeah,
up current pieces that would have helped them to that goal, it hurts. It
yeah,
definitely hurts. And the Leafs didn't have to do that for any of the acquisitions. The only one that they did was Barabanov, and that was, first of all, Barabanov is not in a full healthy lineup for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and second of all,
no,
that's more managing the asset of someone coming from Europe and making sure that we keep that relationship strong with
for sure.
Russia, and giving him an opportunity other place. But we didn't give anybody to get the acquisitions that we made.
No,
Capitals did. That's a
technically,
difference.
I think Barabanov's moved earlier in the year at the around the same time as Lettinen if Robertson doesn't get hurt 2 minutes into his first game of the season, right? Like
Mhm.
I think just like the Lettinen move. Obviously we didn't foresee Sandin getting hurt, but I think that's why they moved him, seeing that Sandin was able to actually, you know, step in periodically and actually provide enough that you could have moved that guy as a mercy trade because you have what you already wanted. Lettinen and Barabanov, I feel, were like insurance for are we sure Sandin can do it? Are we sure that Robertson can do it? Right. So
Mhm.
the Barabanov trade was inevitable. I think there was rumblings about it, which is why he was getting a ton of ice time. On top of that, he kind of deserved it. He was playing well, right? So he gets to go to San Jose now. He's probably going to play a lot more minutes than he played here, and definitely consistently for the rest of the year. And now we have Robertson coming back to the lineup. See if we can get him integrated well. Sorry, there's a fly here. Um, and I think it was a successful day, at least for this team here, for our colors, for what we're the one in the back there, big on the wall. I think we took a nice step towards achieving something. We'll see the performance now. We'll see tonight. We'll see tomorrow, and the rest of the stretch here.
Mhm.
We still have to play teams outside this division. We're going to see how it's going to go. Tampa's D looks great. Boston, if Taylor Hall wakes up, their scoring is going to be
Hey,
crazy.
if we screw up against a team out of our division, that's the third round. I'm happy with the third round exit. Obviously, don't want that. I want us to go further, but let's
Yeah,
take the first two rounds as they are first. I don't think Montreal is going to be a cakewalk. I don't think either. Who are the others?
Edmonton and
Winnipeg
Winnipeg.
and Edmonton are cakewalks. It's going to be a challenge getting to that third round. Everybody's talking about playing outside of our division. Let's get through the first two rounds
Agreed.
first. If we make it to the third round, fantastic. All of a sudden, that first round draft pick that we just moved is the 27th overall. Who gives a shit? Um, and I'm happy with making it to the third round for the first time in what, since like 2000, so, or
2003.
2002, whatever. I'm
2003.
happy with it. Just my closing thought here, and I know this is a thought around the league, not just Leafs fans, but for me, it's really starting to bother me how we're getting used to the Leafs and all the other teams in the NHL. I guess this only matters towards the Canadian teams, but it's starting to bother me how we're getting so used to like no fans in the building and how we're
Yeah,
okay with that. I mean,
it's
we just picked
tough.
up a hometown. Well, he's not really hometown, but
Well, his dad
suburb
was here, right? Like,
that was here. We just picked up a big piece that's going to help us on the most impressive Leafs team that we've seen in our generation. We've got the likes of Foligno, Simmons, Thornton, some other players who are going to play playoff games in front of an empty building where
yeah,
they would have been just absolutely cheered
adored.
on and
Yeah,
supported by a sea of blue. I would have loved to see a full building in an NHL playoff game with the Leafs, and Nick Foligno throws a big hit and everybody loses their mind. Simmons throws a big hit, everybody loses their mind. Like have Maple Leaf Square packed to the rim,
yeah,
go on a deep playoff run. Like imagine what, sure, okay, what if we suck against a team outside of our division? If we're in the third round, shit, winning the second round, there's going to be people flooding the streets after that game. Like right now, it really, really sucks
yeah,
that we're in this situation because like the fact that it's a possibility that not a single Leafs fan will get to watch Thornton in a Leafs jersey in person.
Yeah, that's tough.
It hurts.
Yeah,
It
you
really
kind of just
hurts.
struck a nerve here because they did the Columbus did the goodbye Foligno video and
Mhm,
his two big goals against the Pens, I think in 16 or 15,
mhm,
and the crowd went fucking nuts. And I'm like,
mhm.
I don't even remember that, right?
Yeah.
Like I throw on some vintage Leaf playoff videos from my brother, right? He's born in '03. I think the last memorable run was
Mhm.
'03, right? Lockout came '04, '05. So um I mean, that arena shook, right?
Mhm.
For as much as Leaf fans genuinely stink sometimes, and we all kind of get on each other's nerves, and everyone's got a different opinion, and right, like when shit was going well, it was a party, and you know what? To put a positive spin on everything, the fact that these guys get so fired up for one another
Mhm.
actually it kind of combats the fact that no one's there to actually lift them up because they're doing a hell of a job by themselves. Marner
It
the other
helps.
night, Matthews the other night, that Hyman and Simmons high five that we'll never forget. My shoulder still hurts looking at it. Like
Yeah.
they're there for each other, and you can tell that there could be 22,000 in that arena, or it could be empty for another year, and they're still going to go out there and battle. I think that there is that aspect of having guys around and having the fans there, and when the power plays fucking what, 0 for 40 now,
Go
you
for
know,
34, I think. Yep.
whatever it is. I don't know. It's fucking ridiculous. I thought these guys were going to finish the year at a 40% clip. I even told my brother. He's actually laughing at me right now. I hope they score 100 tonight. But,
Yeah.
like to have that aspect, yeah, I miss it. But to watch these guys wearing this jersey, which is a volatile jersey, the last decade, we know how damned it's been, right? To watch these guys come together and play together and still get that level of fired up for one another and happy for one another and just compete and battle, it's kind of cool.
It's absolutely cool. It's really nice to see. I mean, like you said, you see the emotion from every single player on this team every night, especially those new guys, the Simmons, Thornton, Spezza. Those
Yep.
guys are the ones that are getting the most love from the younger guys, which is fantastic to see. I just, as a Leafs fan, I really wish I could be in that building watching these guys. I
I
really wish
know.
that those guys could feel the love from the city because I know that they know that it's there, but I mean, that building would just be rocking on most of these nights. And when it
Yeah.
comes playoff time, I mean, that's when you get the suits out of the building and you get the diehard fans in. And that place, I've personally never been to a Leafs playoff game. I'm dying to go. I will pay whatever price needs to be paid to be at a game where the Leafs could clinch the Stanley Cup at home. I've already thought about it very hard about what my
I
cap
believe
is.
you
And
when you
as
say
long as I can afford it, I think I'm going. I think that that's the mindset of so many people in this city, and it's really sad to know that something like the Foligno deal is specifically a rental where, yeah, it's happening. Nobody's going to see him in a Leafs
no one's
jersey.
gonna see him. Yeah.
It's sad. But regardless, good sign of things to come. The fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that we're believing that this team is capable of making it to the third round finals, maybe even bring home a cup. I think they could do it. I think a lot of people do think they can do it. It's the least of our issues. If we win a cup and everybody's sad because they weren't there to celebrate, we won a cup. So let's focus on the positives, I guess, here. Appreciate the moves that we made, appreciate the team we've got, and hope for things to come well in the playoffs.
Go Leafs, go.
Go Leafs, go. Thanks for joining, Matt. Appreciate your intake.
Anytime, buddy.